Let's move on to Donald Trump, who's now denying. But, you know, this is what he does, guys. He puts something out there, tries to walk it back, but he said it. And every time he says it, guess what we have found in the past 6 years? You can believe him. So even though he is denying that he called for the termination of the Constitution over his false claims of election fraud, he posted this on his social media site yesterday. The fake news is actually trying to convince the American people that I said I wanted to terminate the Constitution. This is simply more disinformation and lies. But just pull up the post from Saturday, where Trump did indeed write, in his own words, massive fraud allows for the termination of all rules, regulations, and articles, even those found in the Constitution. So we heard reaction from more Republican lawmakers yesterday. All of them defended the Constitution, but only a handful were willing to speak forcefully against Trump. But they did. So listen.
Well, the Republican Party has long been the party of the Constitution. And so when President Trump says he wants to suspend the Constitution, he goes from being MAGA to being Rhino. We're the Constitution Party.
Well, obviously, nobody's terminating the Constitution. What's going on here is a clown is trying to sell tickets to a circus. As a conservative, I think I want three things. I want to defend the Constitution. I'd like Republicans to win elections again, unlike the way this guy's made sure my party could snatch defeat from the jaws of victory in 2018 and in 2020 and again in 2022. I think people are going to have to choose if they're for the circus clown or they're for the Constitution.
The Constitution is enduring, and it will be for millennia to come. Was he wrong?
Is this a disqualifying statement for him to say?
Thanks, Senator.
Certainly not an ex-president. I think that's irresponsible.
You think it's disqualifying? You think it's disqualifying?
Well, it's not clear who's going to run. I think it's certainly irresponsible.
He's running.
I mean, I guess he is until he isn't.
The voters will determine who's going to be the nominee for the Republican Party, who will be the president. So I know you don't want him to be in the mix, but he'll be in the mix. I'm glad he walked it back. What he said was wrong, but there's a never unending desire to bend the rules to get Trump. And, you know, there's a lot of frustration on our side, and we'll see how all this plays out.
Well, I think if you take an oath to the Constitution, you don't take it provisionally, and I can't imagine that a former president would make that statement.
A lot of people see a statement like that and say, you know, what's it going to take for other Republicans to say, like, enough is enough of this guy?
Well, I think I said all I have to say.
Some more reaction. Republican Senator Mike Rounds tweeted, as elected officials, we take an oath to support and defend the Constitution. We should never dishonor that oath. No one is above the Constitution. Anyone who desires to lead our country must commit to protecting the Constitution. They should not threaten to terminate it. And Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski of Alaska writing, quote, suggesting the termination of the Constitution is not only a betrayal of our oath of office, it is an affront to our republic.
Thank you.
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said he plans to offer remarks on the issue.
This is good.
Today.
This is good.
Is it?
No, they're saying something. You got to open the. You got to be graceful.
So
I got to be graceful.
So Eddie, this is the party, as Mitt Romney said,
it's good
that likes to call itself the party of the Constitution. They put the copy, they wave it when it's convenient for them. Kevin McCarthy, who may well be the Speaker of the House when they come in early January, has promised his first act in the first session is to stop and read aloud in its entirety the Constitution, because we've gotten away from that. So how in good faith can they stand behind a man who clearly, explicitly said we have to terminate the parts of the Constitution that don't benefit me personally?
The operative phrase in that question, Willie, is good faith. Right? So it's self-interest. Right. They're worried about the 30% of the base of the Republican Party who will ensure their political well-being, their livelihood. And so it seems to me at the heart of the matter is that we're constantly longing for the Republican Party to be consistent and reasonable. And over the last 6 years or so, it has proven over and over again that it's not. Yeah. And I'm wondering, what is it about, not so much about them, because they prove over and over again that they're cowardly, that they're hypocritical, that they are power-lusting, and we can go on and on. What is wrong with us in our constant longing for them to behave in a rational, reasonable, and morally consistent way? I think it's something about our desire to see a functioning of the party.
Absolutely. And for the Republicans who did speak out in a robust way, I mean, you saw some of them there, at least a little bit.
Who's the robust?
The one who's leaving. Oh, God, why is
Ben Sasse.
Ben Sasse, sorry. Of course, he's leaving, so it's easier for him. And Mitt Romney's always been pretty consistent. Yeah. And the rest were, it was a step in the right direction, and some of them were cowardly. And let me now go there, because Republicans, as you know, Donald Trump, and as we've discussed this week, has put you in a corner. And you have to step out of it, because he's talked about terminating the Constitution. You can't be a Republican. You can't be a conservative. Quite frankly, you can't be an American patriot if you support a man who has said that. And you can believe him. You've learned yourself that you can believe what Donald Trump has to say. John Heilemann, this is a man, Republicans, you're supporting a man. You're afraid to say bad things. You're afraid to repel or to say Donald Trump should not be a presidential candidate. You're afraid to say that about a man who, let's just throw at the dartboard a few things. He said he would sell dirt. He would get dirt from Ukraine on Joe Biden. He would work with a foreign government to get dirt on a political rival. He stole documents from the United States government, classified documents, and he's in the middle of a huge legal problem with the DOJ because of that. He had Kanye West over at Mar-a-Lago a few weeks ago, along with Nick Fuentes. I mean, I'm just...
He led an attempted coup against the United States government.
The January 6th attack on the Capitol.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's the one with the bullet for me.
And then he talks about terminating the Constitution. I just want to, go back down memory lane here for a second. Do you guys remember Reverend Wright?
Sure.
Jeremiah, of course.
Do you remember Republicans when Reverend Wright, it emerged that there was a connection with the Obamas, and he had said from the pulpit things about America that were less than appropriate? Do you remember how Republicans responded? They, I'm pretty sure, went nuts. What's going on here? The hypocrisy is deep, and our country is paying the price. John Heilemann.
Yeah. Yes. I mean, you can play that game all day long. I mean, the Republican Party is I think they're very consistent, Eddie, to your point about you can say consistent and reasonable. They're very consistent over the last 6 years. They have, there was nothing Donald Trump can do that will cause them to abandon him. And the only thing that I thought would ever cause them to abandon him, which was that they would start to pay a political price. They're now paying a political price. They still won't abandon him. Mika, I will never disagree with you about almost anything, especially with relationship to flu shots, health,
9 a.m.
and Eddie's the disposition of Eddie's.
He has an appointment.
Good. I never fight with you about that. I didn't see any courage in most of those statements. I think Mitt Romney has been where Mitt Romney is. Most of them, the consistent thing about those statements is that they all never say the word Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. I can't imagine a president would do this. I'm like, you don't have to imagine it. Here, let me do a printout
Why
for you.
are they afraid to say his name?
Well, they all, I guess, we said this over and over again. They are afraid of the base. They're afraid of the Republican voters, not afraid of Trump. They're afraid of the voters who worship Trump. And they're not wrong to be afraid of those voters in the sense that if they turn against Trump, they believe those voters will turn against them. Is that a position of courage? No. Is it a position that they should take? No. All those things. But that is what they've shown for 6 years, is that they are afraid that Donald Trump will turn to his voters and say, primary that man, end his political career. And apparently that means more to them than the Constitution, the sacrosanct nature of the U.S. Capitol, anything that you can lay out. Principles, governance, violence, all of it goes to the side because they're afraid that if they say something bad about Donald Trump, they'll get primaried. Now, I think that's pathetic.
Right.
It's a sad state of affairs that you're worried so much about what is basically a pretty crappy job anyway. I mean, most of the people that, who wants to, I never want to be a congressman. Like, you could find 50 things to do that would make you more money. You'd have more influence in the world. The job is horrible, but that's what they do. They quit. They don't care about that, Mika. None of them care about that.
John Hellman, didn't you see a slight move in the right direction?
No, I saw all of them avoiding ever saying Donald Trump's name, putting out statements that say the Constitution said, no one should ever terminate the Constitution. The Constitution will never be terminated, as Ted Cruz put it so courageously. The Constitution is enduring, and it will endure for millennia. How that even represents a tiny step towards having any kind of courage, I do not know. He could look at that in front of Donald Trump and say, what did I say here? Mr. Trump, I didn't say a word about you, sir. I didn't say a word about you. I just said the Constitution is enduring and will endure for millennia. I think they're all just as pathetic as they ever were. And I don't think that there's... I mean, Mitt Romney's where he's always been, and Ben Sasse has found his courage on the way out the door. The rest of them aren't even mentioning Donald Trump's name. So until somebody has the courage to at least mention the guy's name in the official statement denouncing the termination of the Constitution, I will withhold any statement that suggests there's been any progress whatsoever. There's been none.
This was dumb of Donald Trump, and he knows it. He's trying to backtrack. Even when Donald Trump tries to backtrack, he knows that he has stepped on the wrong side of his political base. It was a teensy bit of condemnation from Republicans. I mean, the bar is so low. It's almost, they had more to say about this than the Kanye dinner, I would think, because they know Republican voters like the Constitution. Donald Trump knows that. He has had unforced errors in the past 2 weeks. Is he going to keep doing this over and over and over?
I believe him.
He's chipping away at his own base.
And you'd think his track record, I'm going to speak for Joe here, of losing election after election after election would at some point settle and say, it's okay for me to step out and criticize him once in a while, but they don't.